Gender guidance, set to be published tomorrow, will ban schools from teaching kids under the age of 9 years old about sex education and controversial gender ideology. Well, it's that kind of teaching that I think can have a potentially life-changing impact on vulnerable people. Well, as Sascha Bailey, the son of world-renowned fashion photographer David Bailey, knows very, very well, that he was a model turned successful art curator living in Japan with his glamorous lawyer wife. But in 2022, that all came crashing down. Now, Sasha fled the couple's Tokyo home and returned to London, armed with his makeup bag, a few dresses and a month's supply of hormone replacement therapy, apparently. All part of his plan to start a new life by transitioning to become a woman. A complex mixture of reasons has led Sasha to this decision, but he found it relatively easy to follow through with that plan because a Japanese clinic had signed him up for gender reassignment within 10 minutes, reportedly. But once back in London, a long NHS waiting list and a new relationship gave him the chance to rethink his decision. So, for a TV exclusive interview, I'm very pleased to say I'm joined now by Sascha Bailey himself. Sasha, look, thank you very, very much. I really appreciate you coming on and telling us your story. Are we making it too easy, do you think, for people who are maybe a bit vulnerable to go ahead with gender transitioning? What do you think?
Yeah, I think one of the major issues that we're facing is that people are pushed down this route far too quickly without looking at the external factors. So we have a major problem with we look at this thing as from the aesthetic angle. We look at this as, this is what you want to be, this is why you want to be on the outside. You want to change yourself, almost like you want to fit into a round peg into a square hole. You want to be something to solve the problem that's around you from your environment. So you may be in an environment that's very bad for you. You may be, like I was, in an environment where it's abusive. And in order to solve that, you need to be able to change yourself.
OK, and do you think, then, that this is a potentially very big problem in society? I mean, why do you think that this is affecting a lot of men at the moment?
I think this is only going to grow, and I think the situation I was in where, I had my masculinity challenged on a daily basis is something that we see kind of growing in society in general for men. The problem, I think, is that men, especially young men right now, growing up, they're told as a basis, especially if you're Western, that you are evil, you are wrong. As growing up, you have something wrong with you. All of our thinkers, all of the people who think as men are vilified. You just have to look at what happened to Jordan Peterson. And as that's a problem that grows, I think that, I can either be, a cis white male, or I can baptize myself in this kind of cult of gender ideology, and I can get a new label, or I can become something different. And that gives me the opportunity to cast off all of the sins of my father, all of the sins of the generations before, and fit into this society in a way that's new and fresh. And I think that this is something that's only going to grow. I think it's only going to grow massively as we kind of continue to vilify, masculinity in all its forms.
And presumably there was a period of time where you thought that making that transition would have solved everything and made you very happy.
Yeah.
What, in reality, do you think that would have done, a couple of years down the line? I
think a couple of years down the line, we would be sitting here and I'd be a person who had detransitioned. I would have lost my fertility. I would have lost so many things that would have made me a man. And we'd be sitting here having a very different conversation about regret. We'd be sitting here having a conversation about how all of these things were taken away from me, how the doctors didn't tell me, weren't honest with me about what had happened, weren't honest with me about the loss that I would have encountered. These things that we're talking about, we hand them over in society so often to those with kind of the lowest morals. We hand over the only way to speak about this stuff without being cancelled, without having everything taken away from you, is to be someone who exists outside the paradigm of, a standard job, outside the paradigm of all of that stuff. I mean, I'm sitting here as a person who is very lucky in a sense that I can speak about this stuff because I've had everything ripped away from me. I have nothing to lose. So I think it's so important that more and more people do stand up and talk about this. More and more people do provide these kind of incentive structures for people to be able to see a way of improving oneself as a man. Whereas the only ways that we're being offered to do that right now is either, joining this cult, changing everything about yourself, or joining another kind of paradigm which is all about extreme levels of toxic masculinity to almost caricature levels, which is what we see with kind of Andrew Tate.
OK. So what would your message to people be now who are, well, globally millions, but presumably in the UK hundreds of thousands, certainly tens of thousands of people who were where you were a couple of years ago, who are, I think, being spoon-fed a lot of things to essentially look in the mirror and hate what they see, right? And hate what, like you mentioned there, the sins of the father, which are nothing to do with them, really. What would your message be to those people?
That you're not guilty. You're not guilty for what's come before you, and no one is. No one is guilty for what's happened in generations before you. Generations before you are completely irrelevant to who you are now. I mean, we only have to look at the demographics of Occupy Wall Street to know that that's true. We know that it is not the case that, Western young men are benefiting from the fathers from all of our people before us. We're just as subjected, we're suffering, and then we're also suffering the lashes of it. And I think that what I experienced with the relationship I was in is kind of a micro version of that. The macro version is society as a whole. What's the aspiration? Who can you aspire to as a young man? There is not many people out there that you're allowed to look at and say, this is a good man. Anyone who is, or anyone who preaches these values, is generally cancelled, vilified, and taken out of society. Yeah,
well, good for you for coming on and sticking your head above the parapet. The other thing as well I would just like you to emphasise, if you want to, is it's all very well and good making drastic physical changes, and I think from what I can gather you will find a ready supply of medical professionals who are more than willing to do that for you, just like that. But is the issue actually within? Is that what the issue is? And is that what needs fixing and not, going through drastic physical changes for a lot of people, do you think?
No, I think that, we've been taught this from growing up, right? That it doesn't matter what's on the outside. We're taught all this body positivity stuff, and then the kind of ridiculousness is that there's all this body positivity stuff going on, but on the other side, we're told that change yourself completely physically and you will be the perfect thing. You will be exactly what we want. Then we will celebrate you. We'll write articles about you. We'll give you all of these things in society if you just change yourself completely. And you can switch this kind of original sin, if it were, from being born wrong. You can switch it for a version of yourself where you can succeed, you can be good.
Yeah, look, Sasha, thank you very, very much. It's been an absolute pleasure to talk to you and to get to know you. And I'm absolutely certain that we'd have you back on the show and we'd love to, follow you up, follow your story. And I know that you've got a lot of good work planned. So thank you very, very much. And, let us know what you think of all of that, of course. Get in touch. It's gbnews.com/your say.